Hi everyone, welcome to this week's health tip. So today we're going to talk about that other important brain you have, and it's kind of some funny stuff happens. So I'm going to give you like a little biology stuff, and hopefully it won't be too complicated, but you'll get sort of a big concept here. So our body is made up of billions and billions of cells. So this is a representation, like super simplified, of a cell. So basically a cell in your body has like a membrane around it. Inside the membrane there's the nucleus of the cell, and inside the nucleus of the cell there's your DNA. So in the old days, many years ago, they used to think that the nucleus was the brain of the cell. Like that was the most important part because the DNA was in there, and the old dogma was that the DNA is your destiny and everything that happens in the cell is all based on the DNA. And so they thought that the nucleus was the cell's brain and the most important part of the cell. So what they found over the course of the years, though, that something else is way more important. They actually kind of figured out that the DNA is more really just the gonads, and that's just the reproductive organ. And the running joke is that they say, of course, most of the researchers back in the old days were men, and of course they actually thought that the gonads were actually the brain. But what they're finding out now is there's a lot of really important cell biologists. One of them, his name is Bruce Lipton, and they've basically come to the understanding that the membrane of the cell is actually where all the intelligence is. Because this is what's deciding what leaves and what comes in. So this membrane, the cell membrane, is the most important part of the cell, and that's really the brain of the cell. Because I could take that nucleus right out of the cell, and if I don't challenge it too much, and I have some food around here and stuff, and if the cell doesn't really have to adapt too much, it could live for a really long time without that nucleus. But if I puncture that membrane, that cell dies instantly pretty much. It just rips apart and everything falls apart and it doesn't work anymore. So basically the membrane, it's almost like, it's kind of hard to describe, but it's like a layer of a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of fat in there, by the way, a lot of fat, cholesterol, little proteins, and all these things sticking up, but there's all these little channels for things to come in and out. So that membrane decides, okay, let's say vitamin D, which is a super important hormone that we have in our body, let's say vitamin D3 comes and attaches here. Vitamin D3 actually goes in and it makes changes to your DNA. So it has a big influence on your body and how cells reproduce and your health and everything else. But the membrane is actually deciding whether that's going in and out or not. And let's say inside your cell you have some organs called mitochondria, and they produce some waste products. Well, we don't want all that waste filling up in here and clogging up the machinery. So the body will actually bring it to the outside and it'll be eliminated out that way. So this membrane here is very selective of what comes in and out. So that's sort of like the micro level. So I want to take this cell and kind of relay it into what we call the second brain in the human now. So we know that our brain up here, if I take out my brain, pretty much I'm dead. Brain dead is dead, basically. But there's a second brain in our cell, and I'm going to go over this in a workshop that's coming called the Gut-Brain Connection Workshop. And that's on Wednesday, April 11th. We're doing a lunchtime one this time. It's going to be at 12:30 at lunch, and it'll probably be almost 2 hours. Hopefully I can get it done a little quicker because I have patients at 2:30. But that's the workshop we're going to do it at the time, and I'm going to go through a lot of this information, but just to kind of give you this concept, I want you to figure this out a little bit. So I'm going to take this cell, and I'm going to like push a hole into it, so it kind of becomes like a long tube. So pretend that cell has kind of become a donut sort of thing, but like a long tube of it, and we can kind of picture that almost like your intestine. So this is all cell, so this is all still cell membrane on the outside, but there's like a hole in there. That's where your food would go when you're eating, okay? So that's the food going through that channel. On the inside of that tube, we still have this membrane, okay? Inside our body, that's actually millions and millions of cells that are all stuck together. But in this case, just pretend it's just one cell. So we just take this one cell to represent what would be billions of cells. So for you, for example, to take this as the concept of the human, on the outside here you get lots of layers of stuff that would be like our skin, for example. So we have all these layers of protection on the outside, but on the inside of that tube there's still just like one cell layer thick of this, we can call it like a membrane. So here it's actually just a membrane. We put a bunch of these cells together, and that actually becomes what the tube is of our intestines. So inside our intestines we have a bunch of these cells that are all kind of stuck together like these little, one after the other in a zipper fashion. And on the inside of this tube, let's say this is where the tube is here, there's all these little hair-like projections on each one of these cells. And then when you zoom in on those, there's more hair-like projections, and what that does is increases this massive amount of surface area. They say it's almost like the size of maybe like 2.5 tennis courts of surface area on the inside of your intestines and your whole digestive tract. And if you lay that out all flat, because you need so much surface area to have your food and your nutrients and stuff coming in and out. But the thing is, as we said, the membrane of the cell is the intelligence of that organism. So you take that into our level, like our intestines, the selective nature of your intestines is very important for the health of your body. Because if your intestines are doing their job, the bad stuff is going to stay in the tube and get pooped out. The good stuff is going to be passed into your body, and that'll provide nutrition for all your body, including your brain. So if that layer, that lining on the inside gets damaged, or there's problems with it, or these cells aren't stuck together the way they are, or you're not digesting your food and your food is kind of putrefying and making gases, these gases can permeate into your system and cause a lot of problems and stuff like that. So all of that stuff can get into your system and eventually affect your brain. It can affect your mood, it can affect your hormones, energy levels, all sorts of stuff can be affected when we break down the integrity of that membrane on the inside, your second brain. So when that gets compromised, this gets compromised. Just as a little side note, just for example, there's like an amino acid that we call them aromatic amino acids. One of them helps you produce dopamine. And dopamine is an important sort of chemical that we produce a bit of in our brain, but they're actually finding out that like a huge majority of it, could be 80 or 90% of that thing that makes you feel good is actually produced in your intestines. So you can imagine all these people that have like, they're feeling down or depressed or gloomy and that kind of thing. A lot of that might not be up here, the chemicals here. It might be because the chemicals aren't being produced properly here, because this thing has broken down and the health of that second brain has gone down, and then you actually express that in your whole body as your personality and everything else. So I'm going to get into like way more of this stuff over an hour and a half probably in this workshop, but that's just kind of like a conceptual idea to kind of give you the idea of how the membrane of the cell is the intelligence of the brain. We kind of enfold that in and make that sort of your intestines, and really that lining is a bunch of billions of cells, but they're very selective, and that's kind of the selectivity of them is the health of your body too. It's kind of like your second brain, that's why we call it that, and there's billions of nerves in there too, by the way. So that's just a little concept for this week. I just wanted to put that out there and invite people up to the workshop. I'll have the link below in the YouTube video underneath this here, or you can go to the office website, Network Family Care Center, and go to events, and then there'll be a link there for this workshop, and you can sign up for that. And the workshops usually do sell out. We do have quite a few people in there, and this is going to be a pretty good one. So we hope to see you there, and it is a free public event, by the way. And that's your help tip for this week. If this is helpful, please share it, and we will see you next time. Bye.